So being around the C8 Corvette platform for the last 4 years, first with my C8 Stingray and now with my Z06, I've checked out a lot of mods, done a lot of research, and one question I get asked over and over again is, what should be my first performance mod? Not something too expensive, but I want to feel the difference afterwards, you know? So after all of these years, there's a combo of mods that will give you not only the best bang for your buck return, but be budget friendly at only costing you $1,000. In fact, actually it's going to be costing you a little bit less because I have a discount code you can use to save even more money. One of them is even easy to install in like less than 20 minutes with only a 10mm socket, and in fact can potentially save you even more money on insurance and, you know, pay for itself. And on top of that, even though I'm an aerospace engineer and kind of know what I'm talking about, we're bringing in an aftermarket expert to dive even deeper into these mods that are great entries into upgrading your Corvette. So we're going to talk all about that in today's video. So thanks for tuning in, guys, and like I said, we are discussing something that I think will interest you, especially my newer Corvette owners. And in theory, if you don't have a C8 Corvette, that's alright. This mod combo actually applies to the older gen Corvettes like the C7 and C6 Corvettes. And when you think of performance mods to help either bring more liveliness and more power from your sports car, most probably would lean towards things like a cold air intake or CAI, or maybe even some form of a catback exhaust system. Now, while those are viable, they can in most times be more expensive than a $1,000 budget I mentioned before, especially when you try and include things like labor install cost if you're not doing the job yourself. And those kind of items can't really save you money on things like one of the mods that I have in mind. And what I'm thinking of as mods are ported throttle bodies and a good throttle controller. We did full reviews on both on this channel, and I absolutely love them for not only the performance gains, but useful power across the power band and giving us more customizability. Let me try that again. More customizable. No? Okay. More customizability, there we go, I finally got it, on how power is delivered. I can't freaking talk sometimes, sometimes I just cut those out and try again, and other times, you know what, it's gonna be part of the video because it's kind of just fun to see me blabber and just, you know, have mush mouth. Anyways, so along with some of these extra features like theft deterring throttle kill switches, which can be a big player for security and even lower your insurance premiums since it's recognized by certain insurance companies. Now, you don't just need to take my word for it, even though I am an aerospace engineer and I kind of like to think I know at least somewhat what I'm talking about. We're going to actually take the opportunity to share thoughts from an expert at the source who makes these premium quality mods and from Solar Performance. So let's talk to our expert. Alrighty, so thanks for joining us, Joe. I really appreciate you taking the time to, you know, do this interview. It really means a lot to me.
My pleasure, Carlos. Happy to be joining.
So some of the viewers may know you and like Solar Performance, but for my newer viewers, which you know, they might not know who you are or Solar in particular, why don't you take the time to, you know, a little bit to introduce them to what Solar does and how you actually got involved with the team, because that's a pretty interesting story, right?
Yeah, it is. So I'm Joe Lanza, and the way I got to Solar was indeed interesting. I owned a 2022 Corvette at the time, C8. I also owned a C7. And like most people, you know, you've got this high horsepower Corvette, and, you know, yet at the light, you know, the light changes, you go to accelerate, and there's that lag, or what people refer to as the Corvette lag. And, you know, you're a bit disappointed that you thought you sort of had a rocket ship, and you know the horsepower is there, but it doesn't always seem to be available in the lower RPMs or off of idle, or even just cruising around town, and you hit the pedal a bit and you're expecting, you know, more of an instantaneous response. So long story short, I had seen on the Corvette forum and other forums, you know, a product called the Solar Throttle Controller, and it came with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So I figured, you know, there's really no risk, no foul. So I purchased it, put it in both my cars, and literally from the moment I drove off, I was just shocked at the amount of acceleration. That lag was gone, and frankly, I think the best way to describe it is I felt like my car had just been unleashed. And, you know, I like to tell people since that experience, these cars don't have horsepower problems. What they have is basically just calibration disconnects. I'll use that term, or even sort of a bit of a detuning, which we'll come back to in a bit. So,
Yeah.
becoming a big fan of the product and a big fan of those two cars, I called up the company literally to just thank them for the enjoyment I was now getting from the car that I thought, I bought, or in this case, the cars I thought I bought.
Right.
And so we just got to talking, Carlos, and I said to them, hey, listen, I'm semi-retired, had a good career in sales and marketing. Is there anything I can help you guys with in that regard to new distribution channels? Maybe talking to some people on YouTube, and that's how ultimately, you and I got connected, and they loved the idea. And so that really is the story of I guess it's about 18 months now. And since then, we've opened up, a number of different distribution channels and a whole bunch of different YouTube specialists like yourself. So it's been really fun.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's been really fun. It's interesting to hear your story in regards to like it's not just a typical one where, oh yeah, I just got kind of introduced into this product. No, you got introduced to it because you were a customer and then became, and like you loved it so much and just ended up joining their team, which is very unique. You don't really hear that often, kind of deal. So
Yeah.
I can definitely appreciate that.
Yeah, and Carlos, what was funny is last year was our first year at Carlisle, and every time I was going into what the products do, which we're going to be doing in a moment, I just kind of paused for a minute and I said, just so you all know, I was on that side of the counter, you know, 2 years ago, so
Oh
I
yeah.
really can relate to what you're all asking, and furthermore, any skepticism you have, I certainly had as well. But I can assure you that everything we're going to talk about today is not only genuine, not only real, you've experienced it. And furthermore, every product we sell comes with a 30-day, no questions asked, money back guarantee. And as you and I have chatted about, we wouldn't be able to do that if we were getting parts
Oh yeah.
back, every other day, because we'd be out of business, because you can't sell a returns used part, and emphasis on used, because we want people to try them, and when we know that, we like our odds that you're going to love
Right.
it and you're not going to send it back.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So, and like, I mean, some of you guys that are, longtime viewers, how much I enjoy the solar performance products. So that I wouldn't be tooting their horn if I didn't believe in them. I wouldn't have them in my C8 Z06 if that for that matter. But okay, so for those that are unfamiliar, let's look at the throttle body in particular for a second. So Joe, what exactly does the ported throttle body do, and how does that improve performance in a Corvette?
So, Carlos, a ported throttle body allows for more air into the engine than a stock throttle body. The additional gains are really not just an increase in the amount of airflow, but at Solar, we do something rather uniquely in that we re engineer the entire airflow in the throttle body. So, in other words, and you've done a great job of showing this on your Z06 to install, we've added inset inlets where appropriate to smooth out and frankly allow more airflow in, especially immediately off idle. And then the lower and mid bands is where you'll really notice the pickup and acceleration over, let's say the stock throttle body. And, we like to say that we make more power and more horsepower at every position of the throttle, off idle, all the way to wide open throttle. But I don't want to get too involved in horsepower or horsepower numbers. We'll talk about that later. But
Yeah.
it really is the cleaner airflow. It's the engineered airflow that gives you more torque and pull, and yes, to some degree, horsepower at low to mid bands that makes the experience just so much more enjoyable.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's one of those things. Yeah, like how you said, when I did my video on the Z06 install with the 91 millimeter throttle body, I was emphasizing some dimples in particular that you have on the main center shaft, and how that is resemblance of like a golf ball, and why you have dimples on the golf ball because that airflow, you decrease the amount of drag that is made by having those dimples strategically put in those spots, so you get better airflow. And it's so, and like how you're saying, Joe, it's not just making the hole bigger, and anybody can do that, but it's those extra little bits here and there, all those added extra bits that it's what makes your product so superior to a lot of competitors. It's why I love it so much, kind of deal. So I appreciate you explaining that. But talking a little bit more about these throttle bodies in general. So I know there's different sizes, and this is actually a question I've been meaning to ask you just even off camera, but I'm going to ask it here.
Sure.
You have different size throttle body ports, like, so like 87 millimeter, 103 millimeter for like the Stingray C8 Corvette, and then you have like the 87 and then like the 91 millimeter for like the Z06. What is like, why should people go with like one size towards another? Is bigger always the better kind of deal? Like how should one be approaching these different sizes?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one we get a lot. So the answer really depends on what mods you have in the car, or frankly, what your long-term plan is in terms of adding mods. So as an example,
Mhm.
if you're simply adding a larger throttle body to increase everything we just talked about, right? The drivability, more air in, smoother shifts, just an all-around more enjoyable off-the-line acceleration. And say the only other mod you plan on doing, and you don't even have to do this one, but just say you were going to put in a drop-in air filter and kind of call it a day, then in this particular case, and I'm talking of a C8 now,
Mhm.
a 91 millimeter is just fine. The price point of the 91 millimeter is going to be, a bit south of the one larger, say the 95 millimeter. So you really won't get any more benefit for going bigger, because given your mods, there's only so much advantage that car is going to be able to take of the mods you've done.
Right,
Now,
right.
say that you're talking to us and you're saying, well, yeah, I kind of have the plans to just do the solar throttle body for now, but I do plan on doing the exhaust, and eventually I plan on doing a CAI, brand independent, doesn't really matter. Then we'd probably push you to spend a little bit more money and go into the 95 millimeter. And we call that sort of future proofing your purchase, so that as you add those mods, there's no reason to then say, oh, wow, I wish I'd have went bigger, or I wish, I thought that I was going to do this, at some point. So bigger is okay by and large. Not to say in that first scenario you want to throw a 102 millimeter on, because one, you'd be kind of throwing money away, but two, there is a point where it's just not going to run as efficiently
Right.
as intended. So the larger ones are for future mods, or other mods, frankly, that you've already done, like an exhaust. And once you start getting into perhaps supercharging and things like that, that's where like 102 millimeters really going to shine, more so than on a stock car.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I actually appreciate you telling me that, because yeah, I was like thinking, like, what's the point of going with having a smaller one and a larger one? And that makes a lot of sense, kind of deal. So I'm glad that you clarified that information, even
Yeah,
just
and
for
just
me.
Yeah, no, that's good. And just to build on that, one last thing I want to just say is that, keep in mind the ECU or ECM is sort of the brains, right? And we like
Mhm.
to refer to the throttle body as sort of the referee of everything that goes into the engine, right? Because it
Yeah.
really is yesterday's carburetor, if you will, right? It's all
Yeah.
now electronic. And so between that process, if you have a larger throttle body, the ECU and ECM is smart enough to know, you know, what amount of air can be maximized, given what's available to it. So that's
Mhm.
why you can go a bit bigger and really not cause any problems. And
Mhm.
then as you add the other stuff, the ECM learned and the procedure you've done and we do, which is very simple to do. It's a few on-off starts and running it so that the ECM can actually adjust to the additional airflow. It'll sort itself out, and you won't feel the need to regret, going a little bit bigger if you do plan mods. But no need to do it and spend, probably an extra $100 if you don't need to.
Okay, awesome. Well, let's change gears a little bit, and because we talked now about the throttle body, let's talk about the throttle controller, which honestly, for I think out of anything you guys sell, is the best bang for your buck kind of deal. And I'm just like it. if you only have a few $100s, it actually makes a huge difference. But can you walk us through what the throttle controller is? Because it's more than just a throttle controller. There's a lot more going on there.
Yep. Yep. And this is the product when I opened up with you and told my sort of story of how I got, teamed up with Solar. This was what I put in at first. I put in the throttle controller, and literally, as you said, and you can go to our website, and we're told this all the time when we are with customers in person. They literally say this is absolutely the best mod for the money, bar none. And so what it really is doing is back to what I did, and said earlier, which is, think about the engineers at Corvette, where they're basically building this high horsepower engine, and they have to figure out the calibration between the amount of pressure on the gas pedal and how much that throttle body and how fast that throttle body is actually going to open per pressure applied to the gas pedal, right? And so for lots of reasons, including making miles per gallon more efficient, as well as probably the lawyers at GM saying, look, when somebody hits the gas, we don't really ideally want instant acceleration. We want something that has more of a, I hate to use the word lag, but more of a easing into is probably the better way to think about it.
Yeah.
And so for both those reasons, probably is why that experience that we all have on this high horsepower car is, rather, I'll use the term disappointing. And so what we're doing is nothing more than what GM or Chevy could have done, which is just change the curve of that mapping. And again, not to keep quoting your video, but you did such a good job showing the graphic and the chart of that change from, applying your gas pedal and the speed and degrees at which that throttle body will now be opening. And so the best way I can describe it is it literally feels like you have unleashed the beast that or thought you knew was in that car. We don't have a horsepower problem or shortage, whether it's the C8, certainly the Z06, and dare I say the ZR1. What we have is just a calibration, bear hug that is sort of keeping the full power available at that lower to mid RPMs that actually is available to us. And that literally is what I describe as gives you that night and day, and I don't say that lightly, that night and day change, where every time we've installed one of these and we take the new owner for a ride of the device, literally we get quotes like, this is unreal, I can't believe it. I can use a little bit of our language, I guess, since it's YouTube, holy hell,
Yeah.
things like that. And the smile on their face. And even to me to this day, every time I hit the gas pedal, you just got to enjoy it because it's a whole new feel. And frankly, the feel that you really thought you had, wanted, and were getting.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like how you're saying, I had made a chart to kind of just visualize what was going on there because to me, it was such a night and day difference. And I didn't realize how much like the OEM throttle map, how GM actually programs the throttle. It is not a 1-to-1 ratio. So it is super lazy in like that 0 to 50% throttle, like put down kind of deal. And then after that, finally ramps up kind of deal. But with this throttle controller, you can customize it, but more importantly, you can just linearize it. So what you're actually putting down when you put like in regards to throttle is what you're getting. And it makes the car more alive, like how you were saying. So it's a huge thing. And that's just one part of it. And we're going to get to this other part in a second, but essentially it's its own throttle kill switch. But yeah, we'll talk about that in a second here, but which by itself is just awesome. Like I know people personally that just bought it just because it's got a throttle kill switch built into it, which is insane.
No, it's absolutely true. The other thing that's worth probably adding is that everybody has a different personal view of linear or frankly drivability or their preference. And so, GM, no fault of theirs, they kind of have to decide for the masses, taking into account what I said earlier, which I do think are two real parameters that they're probably also mapping to, being MPG across the whole fleet, the car itself, and then some of the safety, lawyer-ish issues. But the broader point is that we provide 10 different modes and 60 plus different settings, so there unlikely is one that you won't find that you
Yeah.
love, amongst them. And think about this for a minute. So if you're in a C7 or C8, we all have that dial, right, where we can go to sport, we can go to track, we
Hmm.
can go to the different settings. But again, somebody decided what your sport was going to be,
Right.
and you might have wanted a more aggressive sort of sport feel. We give you 10 sports settings, right? We give you,
Yep.
10 track settings. So inevitably, you get to almost play GM engineer, and instead of one person deciding what each one of those should have been, you literally get to decide, okay, if I were engineering the throttle response, this is what I would do, and you get to literally go do that, which is really neat.
Oh yeah, and that's what I'm showing in the graph to my viewers that are we don't have the graph in front of us literally, but I'm just going to show it in the video. But that's what
Yeah.
it's showing in the graph, where you see those shades, those different shades within the throttle map, is that ability within each mode to kind of like flex around, customize it to each level to get that specific line that is just right for you, kind of deal. So that's why it's set up in like that kind of graph of different shades, is the different levels that you could do within each mode, kind of deal. So it's really really cool. I absolutely love it. Combining them two, I think, like for me personally, you guys know I love it. But with those two mods together, would you recommend, Joe, like running both of them, and why?
Yeah. So they absolutely are designed to be complementary, though they can work just fine on their own. But the two parts do pair beautifully. And think of it this way: one is an electronic change, and that's really the throttle controller, right? The other one, being the throttle body, is literally a physical change. So together, they will add more horsepower across the entire power band, and you will feel that incredible unleashing of the motor and its true capability, like I mentioned. And again, with a 30-day, no questions asked, money back guarantee, you really don't have any reason not to want to try it. And again, we're pretty confident, based on experience of 6 years, that you're going to be, just like Carlos is saying, enjoying it so much that the thought of sending it back
Oh,
is really not going to exist.
yeah, there was no doubt I was never gonna send this back. It was mine.
Yeah. Yeah. One
Yes.
thing I do want to point out, though,
Hmm.
Carlos, and I think you've mentioned this before, but for anyone new, the irony is that the throttle controller, by changing the acceleration curve to the throttle body, literally adds 0 horsepower. So you don't get any pickup in horsepower. And I know that people like myself and gearheads love to talk about horsepower gains, but this is one product that I can think of. There's probably maybe a few others, but maybe not, frankly, where the experience and drivability, you will swear that you picked up. And I'm just going to throw out some numbers to you that other people who have come back to me at Carlisle after putting it in have validated. So I'm not just making these up. Literally, people have told us, I feel like I picked up 75 or 100 horsepower, and that sounds crazy, but again, just go back to the fact that the car is not horsepower shy. It's
Hmm.
it's really unleashing the horsepower that's there. Hence, there is no gain in horsepower. But in that case, you don't really need additional horsepower. What you need is it unlocked. And
You need
that's the best
useful
way to think about
horsepower.
it.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, yeah. And then for those that like horsepower gains, because we all have to have, that feeling of horsepower gains, if you put the throttle body independently, or, as recommended for the ultimate acceleration, you do pair them together. Yeah, you will pick up, the throttle body horsepower gains. And I think we're going to talk about that in a little while in terms of expectations.
Yeah, and then, well, we can talk about that right now. So, like, okay, real world performance gains. Like, what can Corvette owners expect from like that kind of combo of this throttle body and like throttle controller kind of deal?
Yeah, well, the first thing, and not to beat a dead horse, is from the time you get back in your car, start it, and let the airflow adjust and take off. The throttle response will be an instant wow from the moment you drive off. The horsepower gains, really vary, Carlos, depending on whether we're talking about like a standard, C8 or standard C7, frankly, even a standard C6, or whether it's forced induction, right? So that could make a big difference in the results. It also, if you've got a Z06 and you've got two throttle bodies, in the car versus, one throttle body, say in a C8 or a C7. But I can tell you this, customers have reported gains to us of anywhere from 12 to 30 horsepower, based on what I just said. And again, when you talk about a part that is, several $100s, dollar for dollar in terms of horsepower gains, that's a really good accomplishment.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, compared to any kind of like cold air intake, even the cheapest cold air intake is not going to come close to giving you that large scale useful horsepower across the whole entire range. But for the fact of the matter, it's more concentrated, how you were saying, between that lower to mid power band, where it's useful horsepower. It's not just in the peak where if you only gonna really feel it if you're just going balls to the wall kind of deal, with that kind of stuff. So it's really, for the money, it is something that I'm so glad that I have it in my C8 Corvette. And I know others that have them, have Solar's products. They've come up to me and said, man, I saw your video and you were right, this thing, it makes just a heck of a difference.
Yeah.
It's why we're talking about it, like why we're talking about it now.
Yeah, and Carlos, the other thing I would throw out there, and look, I'm a fan of CAI's overall, but just from personal experience, and now I'm taking off the, my new solar hat, and I'm just telling you as somebody that's had dozens and dozens of cars, my experience with a CAI, solely just putting a CAI in your car versus putting in, say, the solar throttle controller, it's not even comparable. One is going to be off the charts, like instantaneous, and you're going to be like, again, holy hell, to use that quote. The CAI experience will be an improvement. You'll probably hear some sound change, and you'll definitely feel something for sure. Otherwise, nobody would buy them. But it still is not at all close to one another. With obviously the controller, in my opinion, absolutely dominating the A or B, bake off, if you will. And frankly, from a cost point of view, depending on which CAI you might be talking about, the savings on the controller can be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-fold,
Oh yeah.
and that may not even be including the labor. So best bang for the buck. I think you started with that, and it's absolutely
Yeah.
true.
Okay, cool. So what makes your throttle bodies, unique compared to like the competitors out there? I know we talked a little bit about certain features, but what just makes it unique?
One of the most important points I would say is that we actually are truly an engineering and manufacturing company that specializes in ported high quality and engineered throttle bodies and throttle controllers. So, I mean, we literally have and hundreds of thousands of dollars of investment in CAD, CNC, CMM, and we can build a product down to 1,000th, of an inch tolerance. And in fact, we can design, an entirely new throttle body from scratch if somebody had the parameters and design plans that they wanted. And I think the other thing that separates us, and I think you and others, that have installed the products, actually say things like, "My goodness, it looks like a piece of fine jewelry. It's a shame that it's actually going to be mostly covered up," right?
Mhm.
Um, and so, that's really, I think, the thing that sets us apart is we're not subbing work out. We're not, basically having someone else do stuff. In many cases, we do use the OEM products, but there's also cases, for instance, in the Z06 throttle bodies that you have on your car. Those are literally a proprietary build. And the reason why sometimes we'll decide to go proprietary versus just using an AC Delco, GM, Chevy stock throttle body and doing our magic from there.
That's kind of interesting. So you saying that you have the ability to do a lot of this stuff in house. Does that mean like a certain thing of like everything is kind of just done, here in the USA kind of deal?
Yeah, so we actually are a U.S. based company. We're headquartered in Alabama. Our warehouse and shop is in Alabama, and some of the parts, we develop, literally out of there, and some of the parts we source from different parts of the world. But ultimately, absolutely 100% US based company.
That's awesome. So it's like it's an American product that is going into
Yeah.
an American car kind of deal. So that's actually pretty cool. I know
Keep it
that's
all in the family.
Oh
Keep it all in the
yeah, I know
family.
that's really important to especially some of my viewers kind of deal of having that American based company is not just something from overseas kind of deal. So that I can appreciate that. I've seen on your website a little bit that you do have like throttle bodies and throttle controllers for other brands aside from Corvette. I know this is a Corvette channel, but what other brands, in case somebody wants to like has a separate vehicle, they might be interested in putting this. What other brands do you also have these kind of products for?
Well, that's actually really the exciting part is, we focused initially on, sort of sports cars, and frankly, in the beginning, American muscle sports cars. So, we had full complements of throttle bodies and throttle controllers for Camaros, things like Challengers, obviously Corvettes that we're talking about today.
Hmm.
And then over time, we recognized that a lot of folks own trucks, right? And trucks in many cases, and I've heard this from owners, often complain about the same types of, off idle hesitation or lack of acceleration. And so we have a full complement of products, across all GM vehicles, including trucks, as I mentioned. So when you do go to www.solarengineering.com, in the top right corner, if you just click on the store tab, you'll actually see all the different manufacturers that we have. And when you click on any particular manufacturer, it'll show you what the available product line is and match it up against the vehicle. So to answer the original question, long-winded way of getting there, obviously the full GM vehicles, as I mentioned, Ram, Dodge, Jeep, Audi, Porsche, other products from the VW Volkswagen Group, Ford Cars and Trucks, BMW, and we most recently launched Honda, Subaru, and Toyota. So you can check those out as well. And there's no reason why the same enjoyment you get from, your Corvette can't be enjoyed in your other vehicles as well.
So okay, so for the throttle controller in itself, how much R&D went into that? Because I mean, the product itself is like this big, it's this tiny, but it's a lot of software based going into it, a lot of hard work. But just coming from your gut from the source, how much R&D went into this?
Yeah, so the first answer is that every one of our controllers is tuned and built and engineered for that particular vehicle. Life would be good if we could just have almost like a standard curve and then iterations in those 10 modes and 64 settings to iterate from. But unfortunately, life isn't that simple. So each model of throttle controller serves a different vehicle, and therefore has a different build to it, and has been engineered specifically for that car. In terms of how long the product development cycle or testing, literally it can last years, and we keep refining and adding when and if needed to stay market leading, as you would expect. So it's not a 2-week process, it's not a 3-week process, especially when you get into the testing that's required to make
Gotcha.
sure that it truly is advantageous to own, that you're not going to get people that are unhappy with them and sending them back. And then obviously you want to make sure that they're functional, and they're gonna last a long time.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, that's why you don't just see a universal throttle controller. You have specific throttle controllers for every single vehicle. So you have one for like the throttle controller that'll work with the C8 Corvettes, C7 and C6 if I remember correctly. And
Yep.
then you have other ones for like Audis, Porsches, BMWs, the Jeeps. They're all specifically done, fine-tuned, done for that vehicle in mind. So it's not just they just slapped the same thing for everything, like every different vehicle. They've taken the time to meticulously tune these to each vehicle. Now we talked how good these products are, but we haven't actually talked so much about how difficult or easy it is to install these products. And some of my some of my viewers that have been with the channel for a while have seen the process. But Joe, can you explain kind of like the level of difficulty in regards to installing how long some of these products might take an average owner to install if they were to maybe do it themselves?
Sure. So let me start with the throttle controller. So if you're installing it in a C6, C7, and C8, the C6 is its own unique model number. The C7 and C8 are compatible, which is awesome because we have a lot of people who own C7s, and some of them are thinking or have moved up to a C8, and right away the first thing they say is, now I got to go out and buy another one. And in the case of the C7, you don't. The same controller is applicable, and the reasons for that are, effectively same engine displacement, and also the same gas pedal to throttle body electronics used even in the next generation car, which a lot of people may not have realized. But we
I
know
didn't
that
realize that.
programmatically is true. So that is kind of neat. And as far as what's involved, I will say this: if that controller had to, be connected, say, in the back of your car when you open up the back hatch, you would be done in about a minute, literally. It's unclicking, one connector, connecting ours into the one you removed, and then connecting the other end in, back into the pedal. And the difficulty, if you will, is not a technical difficulty. It's more a physical difficulty, in as much as you have to basically get down into where the gas pedal is. And I'm 60, and for some of us, we're not as limber as we were. And
Right.
so, kneeling down and leaning into the car, and let's remember, it is a sports car,
Yeah.
so it's not like, you're in a big old, four-door Malibu where you can, put back the bench seat and basically almost lay on the floor. You've got to kind of crawl in there in a somewhat awkward position. Very doable, mind you. And there's, we've got a lot of videos on our site, and obviously Carlos did a great install video as well. So it's certainly not, it's not difficult. And we've had people, even older than me, actually put it in, and it didn't cause a lot of grief for them. The only tool you'll need, and this is what's awesome, is you just need a 10 millimeter socket, and that's because down by the gas pedal there's a little sort of rubber boot, and you don't really even notice it if you look closely at the gas pedal. Right to the left on the housing itself, the gas pedal housing, there's a little rubber bushing grommet. You just pop that out and it will reveal to you a 10 millimeter bolt. You
Yep.
undo that 10 millimeter bolt, the pedal gets pushed forward and up, and you turn it on its side, and you will clearly see that connector that you need to unplug. Plug that into ours at one end, plug the other back into the pedal, put the pedal back in, snap it down, put the 10 millimeter bolt in, and put the grommet back, and you're literally done. And I'm not the most technical person. I know my way around, cars quite a bit, having had a lot of them, but I can do that install now, even with everything I just said, in probably about 7 or 8 minutes. So it really is not very difficult to do. Equally so, let's move over now to throttle bodies. On the C6 and C7, very, very easy. You open the front hood. We all know that big accordion black boot that really literally goes into the center of the engine. That boot is actually going to the throttle body. So if you just pop out the ECU, with a clip to unattach it from that area, you undo the clamp, or in some cases there's two clamps holding that big rubber boot on, and you pull it back and sit it underneath the throttle body right in front of you. There's simply just 4 bolts that are holding that throttle body onto the engine. You just simply take those off, insert ours. Sometimes you may require a spacer. If you do, we provide it. If you don't need it. You just put the 4 bolts back in. You run through a few run cycles that are in the instructions to let the car learn the new amount of airflow, and that's really it. So even that install, for somebody, again, not highly trained or talented like
Yeah.
myself, that's probably all of 20 minutes. So both of these are really definitely, I would say, DIY, and with the videos that you've done, anybody could really follow along. Now, where it gets a little bit more complicated is really with the C8 in both the throttle body and the throttle controller. I'm sorry, not the throttle controller, just solely the throttle body.
Throttle body.
Yeah, and the reason for that is not that it gets any more technically complex. The problem is, being a mid-engine car, of course, you've got to open up the trunk, sort of undo all the
The air
insulation
box.
yeah, exactly. You got to remove the air box, and then basically sitting right in front of you is that same visual of your throttle body, only it's now in the back of the car instead of the front. So it's
Yeah.
really the preparation of getting to it. And again, it's not technically difficult, and your video does an awesome job step by step. It's really just the amount of bolts you've got to take out, which takes a little bit of time. It's nothing really over the top. Then once you're in there, again, it's simply 4 bolts to take off the throttle body in terms of a C8. And if obviously we're talking Z06 C8, then you've got 2
Two
throttle
throttle
bodies
bodies.
or
Yeah.
8 bolts to remove. But you've done it. How would you? I mean, how would you, describe
I
the
I
process?
I categorize it as an easy intermediate level of difficulty to install. It's not necessarily, it's not hard. It really is not hard to do. It is time consuming, and it's one of those things, if you're not as familiar with just, turning in a wrench kind of deal, it might be a little bit more formidable if you don't have a set of like instructions to follow. But thankfully, like, because I went through it, I actually show you step by step how that looks, kind of deal. And that same kind of process is easily applicable to a regular C8 Stingray. Actually, it's a little bit easier than on a Z06 because you're only removing one and replacing it with one instead of two for the Z06. But overall, I'd say a seasoned beginner or like early intermediate level person can definitely be able to handle this with no problem, and maybe take them like a couple of hours, maybe 3 hours if they're enjoying a drink or two on the weekend while they're doing it, kind of deal. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it is definitely one of the easier installs that I've done. Very straightforward kind of deal, and really no issues with installing it so long as you follow everything that needs to be followed.
Yeah, I think that's a really good summary. I would say also for those of you that even with the C6 or C7, that for whatever reason, might just be a little bit technically intimidated. The good news is, as I mentioned to you, it's not a very timely install. So if you go to a trusted shop that you have good faith in, and they're not going to sort of jack up hours on you, they're going to literally charge you on a C6 or C7. I mean, an hour. If they're being generous, maybe an hour and a half. And that would really
Right.
be, even frankly, a bit over the top. But at least you have a range of what to expect. And dollar wise, you're not going to break the bank
Yeah,
putting
definitely.
a throttle body in a C6, C7. To Carlos's point, the range is probably a good hour and a half to 3 hours, depending on the shop, depending on the talent level, depending on lots of things. But again, you have that discussion before you just give them your car and sort of blindly let them give you some crazy hours. But as long as you discuss that all up front, even that dollar wise is not going to be too outrageous to do versus the gains you'll get, especially when you do both,
Hmm.
because you'll be off the charts to the point where the cost of the 2 parts plus even some labor is still well south of, as we talked about, even just doing maybe a more expensive CAI. And the combination of the throttle body and throttle controller, and I would put this up against anybody, is not even going to be in the same arena.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And it's interesting you talk about the cost, because like we might as well just get into the cost. And that was like the whole point of this video, is like trying to figure out what's like the best bang for your buck for performance for your Corvette that's like under $1,000, which frankly, in regards to like mods and stuff like that, if you're talking performance mods, is not a lot of money, kind of deal. So one of the things that caught my attention is that for both the ported throttle body and the controller together, that like the cost is under $1,000, even technically with a little bit of labor thrown in there. Like, how did you guys pull that off without sacrificing quality?
Yeah. So I'm going to answer that the following way. Our mission was to be the best quality and price company in the business for throttle bodies and throttle controllers. In that way, the analogy I would use is, think of what the C8 just did to the automotive world, right? Um, they changed the game in terms of being able to have a mid-engine car that competes with cars that are 2, 3, 4 times as more expensive, and ditto the Z06. And so when you talk about the capability of engineering and doing it, it is all possible as they demonstrated. And we like to think on a smaller scale, we're dedicated to accomplishing, the same thing.
Yeah, no, it's freaking amazing. That's why it's funny because when we first started talking back and forth, I was cautiously optimistic because I'm like, man, this sounds way too good to be true. And frankly, it freaking is. That's why I love
Well,
y'all's product so freaking much.
well, that's exactly how I felt when I put them in my car, and I just thought this is too crazy. Why isn't GM doing this? Why are they letting us buy Corvettes that could be so much more exciting and enjoyable, and ditto across all the other products that we make them and manufacturers for? But I think we came to that answer earlier, which is it really comes down to miles per gallon that they have to meet across their individual cars and total fleet. And I do think it's to some degree certainly a safety issues. And it's funny because if you're thinking about a C8, we're actually less than $700 for those two parts if you're going to install them yourself.
Mhm.
And when you get into the Z06, for just about that $1,000 marker that you talked about, you're putting in two C8 throttle, I'm sorry, two Z06 throttle bodies as well as the throttle controller. And again, if you're looking for the ultimate acceleration bar none and smiles every time you hit the gas pedal,
Yeah.
I don't know of anything that you can do that doesn't change the tune of your car, that does not allow you to have to go inside the engine in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't change your fuel trims. Um, I don't know of anything, and be great for any of your followers if they want to chime in. But I'd be hard pressed in all the years I've been around cars and more in tune with what we're doing, in the last year and a half.
Oh yeah, definitely. And just a shout out to the viewers. I know some of you have solar performance products and stuff like that. Definitely let us know what your experience with it is, and cuz it really does make a difference getting that feedback, both the good and even the bad kind of deal. I don't expect any really bad kind of deal. And it's funny because sometimes the most criticism I see is from people that don't have the products. They say, "Oh no, it can't possibly be that good," or whatnot. Maybe you just need to push down on on your throttle pedal a little bit harder. But those same people, we always challenge in saying, "Hey, why don't you just buy the product, try it for yourself? There's a 30-day guarantee on them that you'll why not give it a try and see for yourself? And if you still feel the same way, all the same to you." Okay, so we talked about the performance stuff in regards to the throttle controller a little bit, but we haven't talked about the other side, the theft deterrent side of that, and the actual built-in kill switch of this throttle controller. So how does that feature actually work? And can you explain that to us, Joe?
Sure. So, I mentioned earlier, we're always iterating and we're always trying to, include new benefits over time. So that was one that, originally was not in the product, that was something that people were talking about in the market of, cars getting stolen. And so our engineers were clever enough to think about, well, based on what we do with our controller, i.e., we're changing the curve, right, from the gas pedal to the throttle body, and we're telling it how fast and at what percentage to open at what pressure. So the epiphany was, well, what if we were able to, to use your term, create a kill switch whereby when you hit the gas pedal and you floor it all the way down to the firewall, it doesn't do anything to the throttle body, and the throttle body stays as if you've done nothing. And so they were able to do that and add that to the product. And as you said earlier, we literally have people came up to me at Carlisle and they said, "Hey, I hear about this lock feature. There's a lot of Z06s being stolen. Um, Tell me about it." And I told them about it. And I said, "You just go on your phone. It's Bluetooth enabled. And you just literally go to the settings. You go to that particular area. You turn the button. Either green is on and green is off. And it's that simple. And if somebody starts your car because they stole your RFID code, or maybe they stole your keys somehow, and they start it, they put it in reverse or drive, the car will only idle. It will not take the accelerator in any way, shape, or form. And unless somebody's going to idle their way, stealing your car,
Pretty
um, you
much.
know, you've got a really good, low cost, way of protecting your car. And I'm going to answer this one outright because we get this next, which is, well, What happens when the thief is watching a video like this and they understand that, they can maybe disconnect it? So here's the real truth of it. As I mentioned earlier, while the install maybe takes 8 minutes for somebody like me, for somebody else that even knows, what they're doing, but they don't do it frequently enough, it probably takes closer to 15. Okay. And so imagine this scene for a minute. Okay. You break into a C8 Corvette, the door opens, the interior light goes on. So you have to shut the interior light off. Okay. And then you start the car, you realize that you have no throttle. So now you open the car door again. Maybe the light goes on, maybe it doesn't, depending on whether you're disconnected or not. Now you have to get down on your knees, okay? You have to have a 10 millimeter wrench. You have
If you
to
have
undo
that,
the
even to begin
grommet.
with.
You need a flashlight, which is not what you want to be doing when you're trying to steal a car and creating commotion, right? You then have to take out the 10 millimeter bolt. You have to unsnap the gas pedal forward and up, turn it on its side, disconnect it. Now, you've got to find where that little controller might be, because most people don't have it just sitting right at the bottom of the carpet. So now you've got to reach behind, find it, disconnect that end of it, and then put them back together, all in hopes that the owner has not walked up behind you with your back to him and smack you in the head with a wrench for trying to steal his car.
Yeah.
So, is it possible? Anything's possible. Is it realistic to think that even if somebody understood how to do it, that they're just not going to get the hell out of the car and go find one that's easier? I would suggest the latter is what's going to happen.
And that's a fair point. That's just a thief that is thinking rationally and not just hyped up on adrenaline, trying to get this car moving as fast as they want to, because they don't want to just be sitting there. Like that's there's so many extra factors that have to be taken into account that, yeah, in an ideal world, yeah, they'll be able to, oh, there must be a throttle controller on this. Let me just look down here. There's so many other things that play into it that you can't really say it like see, and that actually like kind of goes into being a good theft deterrent, that it's recognized by insurance companies. And like frankly, that's just, my next question would then be like, because I kind of know that some of these insurance companies, they recognize this product, this throttle controller, as an actual theft deterrent, and it can actually save you a little bit of money on your insurance. So Joe, like, what's your experience with that and kind of deal?
Yeah, so we reached out to Adam Boca about 6 months ago at the National Corvette Museum Insurance Company, and many of you may actually have your cars insured through them. I have for 11 years. They're a great bunch of people. Their prices are significantly lower, than the big box, insurance companies. They do have some limitations on mileage, but as long as you fall into those limitations, there's no reason not to reach out to that team and get a quote at a minimum. And in most cases, I think you'll probably end up finding a much better deal for yourself. So when we talked to him about what our product did, Adam, he was pretty astonished and said, this is a great, as you said, theft deterrent product. And so he talked, with underwriters, and they basically, agreed. And so the way it will work is you would reach out to the team, of NCM. You can go to their website, NCM Insurance, and just Google it and talk to one of their reps. Their reps will be familiar with, our partnership, and they will be able to quote you the price of the insurance, inclusive of what they sort of refer to it as a passive alarm discount. And then depending on what other discounts you may have or are eligible for, and frankly, what your state allows, because I didn't know this, but some states recognize a passive alarm sort of discount and some states don't. So there are some factors, but nonetheless, it's worth the phone call for both reasons. Yeah. And yes, you absolutely can save. And we have members in our club here in New Jersey that actually did save money, on their insurance. It wasn't boatloads, but for the price of the product, it certainly can. Helps. Yeah, and it can recoup the price of the product over, just several years or so.
Yeah, definitely. That's freaking awesome. It's one of those things I never really considered, and I actually have to check that out for my car in regard to maybe it'll lower my insurance, kind of deal. So every little bit helps, kind of deal.
It does, and I was pretty surprised at the difference. And again, like I said, there are a couple constraints that as long as you drive your car in that manner, in terms of, you have to demonstrate that it's not your everyday car, that you own another vehicle. If you can check that box and you're happy with either 1,000-mile plan, or I think there's a 3,000-mile or even a 5,000-mile a year plan. If those prices work for you, and those mileage constraints, then they are, by virtue of the fact a lot of people who own Corvettes use it. Oh, other side note, it does not have to be only just a Corvette. While it's in their namesake, it has to be a collectible car of some sort, or viewed as a collector car, as opposed to, a 2007 Subaru. But Mustangs, Challengers, anything that is sort of outside the ordinary, base type car.
Oh yeah, no, and I can tell you, like I can say for myself, these products are tried and true, and I've used them, and I have not had a single issue with those products. No check engine lights, no nothing. They are such rock solid products for which, especially for the price point you're getting. I mean, it's absolutely awesome. And I mean, we've done giveaways of solar performance products and such. Like just recently, a throttle body for a Z06, the 87 millimeter. And I believe we might be doing another giveaway item from Solar. Joe, do you want to kind of chime in on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So, you're good at twisting my arm, and I'm easy fodder. So yeah, we're happy to provide a choice of throttle controller for either the C6. As I mentioned, we do have one model number for the C7 and C8. So if someone chooses that, either for their C7, they can use it for their C8 going forward. And so we'll do a winner's choice. You can handle it however you would like. Just let us know who the winner is, and like always, we'll make sure we get it out pronto.
Awesome. Well, in case you don't win like the giveaway, guys, you can, like, again, how you've seen, you can always use my discount code and just go to their website and just check it out. If you like their products, definitely go ahead and use that code and save yourself a little bit of money. And just enjoy the smiles that it puts on your face, because these products are just fantastic. So Joe, thank you for taking the time to do this interview, talk about the products in detail. It's much better than me just talking about it, when you can just have a conversation, especially when it's like coming from the source. It makes just the world of difference. So thank you, Joe. I really do appreciate that.
Well, Carlos, thank you. It's been a pleasure as always. And I love what you do for the public and the time you take. It definitely is very much appreciated by me. And I know that all your followers and the Corvette community as a large really do appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you.
So there you have it, guys, from the source at Solar Performance, some really awesome performance mods that can work with your Corvette, and frankly, a lot of different cars that you may have. If you're interested in any of these products, definitely check them out. Use my discount code, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and want to see more videos like this. And yeah, we will see you on the next video. So take care, guys.